Welcome to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson. My special guest today is Tammy Thomas. Tammy, nice to have you here, buddy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And tell me about what do you do for a living?
What do I do for a living right now? I am the state director for Safe Families Kansas. Safe Families for Children has been around for about 20 years, founded in Chicago. We're in over 40 states, and we're in a couple of countries outside of our borders. And in Kansas City is where we started. We're now currently in the southeast part of Kansas. We're in Wichita. We're also over at the Fort Riley area as well. Are
you all part of one big group, or is it individuals that are set up that carry that same title?
Safe Families Kansas is a part of the larger group of Safe Families for Children, which was founded in Chicago.
And it's almost nationwide.
Yeah, just nearly nationwide. Absolutely.
Okay, and so what's the goal?
Keeping children safe and families together. Having a history in the child welfare system as far as being in a leadership role there. The engagement of government within the family can be very intrusive and cause a lot of trauma. But if we wonder what happens to these families prior to DCF's investigation, what happened? One call to the hotline did not force someone to go out. So we want to become involved with families prior to that time.
Prior to DCF?
That DCF engagement.
And DCF stands for?
Department for Children and Families.
Okay, and so they're the ones, that's the group, and they do a good job too, but they're the ones who receive a call that so-and-so's a runaway or fighting parents and those types of things, and they need the help for that.
Right.
Okay, and so how does your organization mirror that or take place with actions before they get to that point?
Sure. One of the biggest things that I want to say right away is that when families are engaging with Safe Families, the parents keep full custody of their children. They aren't taken away from them. We have no legal authority to take children. These children belong to that family. So usually what happens in Kansas, we have an intake line that is manned 7 days a week. And if let's say a school or a shelter or a police department comes across a situation where it doesn't rise to the level of a hotline call to DCF, many times we can get that referral. And then parents will go on the internet, they'll type in they need help, children and I need help or whatever, and Safe Families intake line will come up, and many times we have families that just call themselves asking for help. And as far as an organization, we go into churches, we present what Safe Families is, and volunteers step up and say, hey, I want to be a part of that. The positions we have, they can host children in their home. Maybe someone just needs a friend. The only friend they have is the last drug deal they made, or maybe the last domestic violence partner they had. We have people that just say, hey, I want to be that friend. I want to be the name in that phone that they can call instead of these other folks.
So what's the age group that we're looking at for these kids?
0 to 17.
Wow.
And our most common hosting is around 5, 6, 7 years old, and our average hosting time is 4 to 6 weeks.
Why that age bracket? That's pretty young.
They're very vulnerable. These kids are very, very vulnerable, and it's typically parents that call in and they just need help. They may be a single parent. They may be a parent that, hey, I have to go into some kind of alcohol rehab or drug rehab. I don't have anybody to keep my kids. And they'll call us, and the only thing they can do, if there's not someone like a Safe Families, is they go into police protective custody, and then they're in the foster care system until such time the parent comes back and has proven that they're clean. And as a judge, you know that once the courts get involved and all, there's a lot to do.
Sometimes the parent doesn't get back into the system or back to the family with them because drugs, etc. Well, when I was a kid, the worst drug we had, I don't know if it was worse. I kind of liked it at the time, was Jack Daniels and some beer, but we didn't have any of this other stuff that's going on now.
Right.
And this is just a disaster.
Yeah. It is a disaster, and you see so many kids and so many families that are in turmoil, and these children love their parents. They love their mom. They love their home. May not look like mine, may not smell like mine, but that's home, and that's where they want to be. And so we want to wrap around that family in a circle of support and provide. Sometimes it's just maybe, like I said, the phone call, or maybe they need some meals brought in once a week, twice a week, or maybe they just need a weekend where the kids are cared for and mom can take a deep breath and get back on her feet.
How many people are working with your organization in Kansas City, Kansas area?
Well, in Kansas, we have 13, I believe, that are paid professionals, but we work with a volunteer base that is professionally supported. So our volunteers are who really
Sure.
do the hard work, and we're behind the scenes making sure that what we're doing legally is correct. We don't want to overstep anything, and just encourage our host families and provide the needs that they have while they're hosting a child. They're not paid. Foster parents are paid.
Yeah.
These folks are not paid at all.
I'm with you. We're going to cut away, take a break. You're watching Stories That Matter. Welcome back to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson. My special guest is Tammy Thomas. And Tammy, I have enjoyed that first segment because that is absolutely amazing. I don't know. Like you said, being a judge, I see the DCF connections and families that are just terribly dysfunctional. But you were telling me in the last segment that many of the kids that you run into are 5, 6, 7 year old.
Right.
Why? What's causing that? Is it the parents that are having some problems?
Yes.
Are there more single parents than?
Yes, I'll certainly say that. And not only that, another unusual statistic that surprises me in the state of Kansas, out of 100% of the children that we host, about 47% of them are males. And of those male children, those boys go back to a home where only 4% have a male in the home.
So dad's
Lack
not
of dad.
involved in.
Right.
Okay.
The structure of the family is at risk, and these children are subject to it, and it's becoming greater and greater every day.
Now, so that tells me then if we've got 47% that are boys and 53 that are little
Female.
girls. So going back into the home, they generally have mom.
Generally,
help
they
them.
have mom or grandma, someone along that. Sometimes mom can be in jail. She may be in prison for whatever reason, and you have a grandparent or maybe an aunt or someone caring for the children.
Sure, and I see that a lot because I get to go to the prison at Ellsworth State Prison and give a message, kind of like the pastor does. He's sitting over here ready for us, and so that's what he does. And boy, this is there's a lot going on up here, and we're talking about 5, 6, 7 year old. What's the biggest problem that they're having? Is it that they're isolated?
Yes, and usually the parents are either homeless or they're socially isolated, mental health issues, and sometimes physical health issues, addictions, and all of those types of things. And when you don't have the resources, you or I probably could pick up our phone, something's going down, I need some help. We've got 10 or 15 people we can call, and they're going to respond just like that. These people don't have anyone. And so when you don't have anyone day after day after day, it takes its toll on you. And it takes its toll on your value into what you can give your children. And kids are suffering for it. So at Safe Families, what we do, we go into churches, we seek volunteers, because actually that is the role of the church, is to fill that gap. And we live in a society where the government has stepped into that gap. And it's a very difficult place to be in. Unfortunately, we have situations that require government intervention. But we believe at Safe Families that children, their parents, have the ability to be the parent that their children need them to be. And that's what we try to sustain and nurture back to a healthy place. We had a young baby, gosh, I think he was 3 days old, and mom was drug exposed at the child's birth, or the baby was drug exposed at birth. And we got a call from Children's Mercy Hospital, and the baby was going to go into foster care if we didn't have a host family. And this mom had 3 other children that she lost those children to the foster care system.
They were adopted out.
They were adopted out, yeah. And so this one was on its way, but it took a really hard-working social worker through DCF. That's how we got it, was a referral through them to Children's Mercy. And then we had an unbelievable single woman step up to be the host mom of that little boy. And this mom, the bio mom, she was on the wagon, off the wagon. She disappeared for a bit. She was in jail for a bit. But we believed in her, and the social worker from DCF believed in her. And today, we're 3.5 years later, and that mom has her son. They're safe, living independently in Topeka, and she's being the mom that she wanted to be the first 3 times.
Good for her.
And so the host mom that kept that little boy for 9 months, which is an anomaly, she is now the godmother to that little boy.
Oh.
And so they celebrate holidays and birthdays and all of that kind of thing.
And that will continue on until...
Yes, it will. Those are organic situations that Safe Families loves to foster, because these parents that we're serving and these families we're serving, they're not a one and done thing. Government is transactional. You get a Medicaid card, you get food assistance, you get maybe 4 or 5 visits to a therapist, and then check mark that, everything's checked, you're good, you should be good, move on. And actually we're about that relationship, because these families are like us. You're either in a crisis, you've walked out of a crisis, or you're looking at a crisis. And so we know if we can get that parent supported, we don't always have to take the children out of the home. The parent may not want that. These are their kids, and they can say, I don't want you to do that. So maybe it's a family friend that comes just to visit mom, or maybe she helps get her house cleaned up, or show her, this is a way you can do what you want to do to get to where you want to go, and just have someone that encourages her and genuinely cares about that.
So the type of call that you may get is somebody as single mom and has 1 or 2 kids, and they're young, and mom can't bring in the money because she can't afford the babysitters to go leave the home and find some work somewhere, and the man who was fathered the child is okay, I'm on to the next person and the next person and so forth. And I don't know where this woman would go if she didn't have
and that's
like your help.
That's what you see in DCF. I saw it so many times. And in fact, I remember one day I had a call from my front desk. I was the director for the Kansas City region of DCF. And she came, the person at the front desk called my office and said, Tammy, can you come to the front? And this is a waiting room where folks sit until they get attended to what they need help with. And the staff had 3 children over here in the side of the lobby. And apparently the children's mother was visited the day before by a social worker. And the social worker didn't make a recommendation, but the mother just felt like the rug had been pulled out from under her. And she brought her 3 children to the office and told the front desk worker, if you can do better than I can, here you go. And she left. But if she needed help, I think back, and it just breaks my heart every time I think of it, because I see these 3 kids. And she just needed help. She wanted to be that mom, but she didn't have anybody to support her.
Did she ever reintegrate with them?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, listen, we're going to cut away, take a break. We'll be right back. You're watching Stories That Matter. Welcome back to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson. With me, of course, you recognize on the outer screen right there is Tammy. And now we've got another individual in the middle here with us, Jacob Lierz. Did I get it right?
Yeah, that's great. Perfect.
No, I thought I'd mess Jacob up. So tell me about your story, because you've got quite a story to share.
Yeah.
Exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a pastor in the Kansas City area on the Kansas side, and I get to hear a lot of ministries, lots of good things, lots of amazing ministries all over the city and all over the state, just doing amazing things to minister to the gospel. And one time I was interviewing this lady from Safe Families for Children, and as she started telling the story about what they do and how they take care of kids and mom and preserve families, and I don't know if it was on the outside, but definitely inside, my jaw was on the floor because I was like, they're telling my story. This is kind of what happened with me. And so we started partnering with Safe Families as a church, and just got more and more excited about it, more entwined. And eventually now I'm still a pastor, but I work part-time with Safe Families, just talking to other pastors, kind of saying what Tammy said. This is the church's job, right? The Lord gave us the way to take care of kids, and it wasn't the government's job. It's the church and the families where kids belong. And so we're committed to that mission, and I'm committed to inspiring other pastors to do the same thing. And again, my story, I was a foster kid and had a single mom. She was a military mom, so she'd moved around, found her way to Kansas, and had a husband that ran off, and she was alone with her 2 kids and didn't have a way to take care of them, didn't have her family around, didn't have a support system. And we ended up in the foster care system at a young age. And if you've seen any of the numbers for foster kids, it's not good. Foster kids, the outcome, again, because it's not the state's job to take care of kids, end up being the ones incarcerated, being the ones addicted to drugs and human trafficking and all those horrible things. And that was probably my fate. That was probably the direction I was headed. But we got to a good church. And this church, it was before Safe Families. They didn't have a name for it, but they just committed. They said, we're not going to let these kids go into foster care.
How many kids were we talking about?
So me and my sister, and they just were committed to our family. And so there was 10 times where we probably should have gone to foster care, but one of the families in our church took us in instead. And it was just a different dynamic. And we didn't have any bad, abusive, or terrible foster situations. And we still, we work with DCF, and we appreciate what they do and understand that they're needed as a safety net. But it's not supposed to be a trampoline with all the kids bouncing off of it. It's supposed to be a safety net. And if the church steps up and does their job, it makes it easier for the state. It makes it easier for the kids. There's a difference between the police showing up at our house and taking us out of mom's arms and putting us into custody, and we never know when we're going to see her again, to a family in our church taking us in and loving on us, and we get to stay in the same school, the same church, have the same friends, and it's all more familiar, and it's much, much less traumatic and had a much better outcome. For me and my sister, at least, we got to witness it and live it and see what the results of this kind of ministry are.
So as you were growing up in this setting up here, and you went through it, and so you had, I can tell you already know, but it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're laying there awake, and it's what happens from here? How's this going to play out for me, and etc. And you turned that into something that you could share with those in the church, and the church got on fire for that, because that's where they want to be. They want to help. They want to help. And you went through that, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the amazing part, because it doesn't matter how big your church is or who you are in the church. There's something for everyone. Like Tammy said, we have a circle of support. So you might not be ready to take in 2, young kids and take care of them, but you can cook a meal. You can mow a lawn. You can
give them a pair of shoes.
Anything, we have resource friends. We have all sorts of partners, lots of handles to grab onto to carry the weight of this ministry. And again, do what Scripture tells us. So that true religion is to care for the orphan and the widow in their distress. That's what we're called to do.
And what church are you serving now?
I serve at Life Mission Church in the Kansas City metro area.
Metro area.
Yeah.
Okay. And your pastor?
Yeah. I do all of our global missions and local outreach. We were missionaries for 10 years in Africa, in Muslim Africa. Have 5 beautiful children and a wife, and it's not just what was changed for me because of my church, but there's a legacy, right? Ministry has ripples. And so now my kids have a good father. My wife has a good husband, and I didn't learn that from anyone except for the church and by the grace of God and by their intervention in saying, they're not going to go in the system. They're not going to be one of the statistics. And I'm living it out and couldn't be more blessed.
What do your 5 kids say about that when they listen and probably have heard about what you went through as a child? Yeah,
it's funny. I think a lot of us have that story where our kids can't even imagine how we grew up. Not just the technology stuff, but even my kids have it pretty good. And I probably think they're a little spoiled compared to the way we grew up. We didn't always have a home. We didn't always have utilities, and went through all those things. And they don't have to go through that, which is probably the best part, is that they haven't had the experiences I've had, and I don't ever want them to have those experiences.
Yeah.
And I know that it'll be even better for my grandkids because my kids are growing up with a more stable home and structure.
That makes sense. What about your mom? Is she still around?
Yeah, Mom's doing great. She found a good husband. She's been married 5 times. 5th time was a charm. And he's great. So they got married after we were all out of the house, and she was, alone and single. But he's been great to her, and she lives out in Georgia. And she's a veteran, so she served in the Army and the Navy. And she's doing great, following the Lord, and doing better than she ever has.
Well, that's amazing.
Amen.
You've got a better story than most kids who go through that, because it's quite often is, Mom, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
I can't take it. You go on to somebody else. But when you bring the church into it, and those who, in my experience with the churches, if they just know what the need is, that they will give you 110%.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've seen that. We see that. We partner with dozens of churches all over Kansas and all over the country. Again, we're in over 40 states, so wherever you're at, there's probably a Safe Families nearby. And I would just encourage everyone, especially if you're a pastor, I'm going to get on you a little bit, encourage you to seek out Safe Families. Don't wait for them to come to you so that they can empower you. Because we're a ministry, Safe Families, but more than anything, we're empowering the church to do what the church is called to do.
Yeah. And I imagine when you're in the pulpit and you're looking out there, you can pretty much spot where this kid's having a tough time.
Absolutely.
And I bet your eyes are drawn to him or her.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see little Jacobs all over the place. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, we're going to cut away, take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Stories That Matter. I'm visiting with Tammy Thomas and Jacob Lierz, and this has been amazing, talking about the kids and you being involved with the church, and you having been one of those children that were separated from a parent and your only parent, and went through all of this. And just like we were talking about, some of it on the break is you can spot them. You can spot them just by looking into the congregation. And the good part is, with the church being involved in it, the church wants to help.
Yeah. Amen.
So where do you guys go from here?
Well, I think it's important to share too that while we may be offering care for a child or for a family, you may be hosting a child, you may be bringing meals into the home, or you may have someone that's doing car repairs for a family in need, but everyone can do something. God has given us time. Where are we investing our time? And this is the gap that the church belongs in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what it is you do, you can give. But I think something that needs to be spoken of is the children within the host home. What example are we being to our kids?
Sure.
And these teenagers, these 10, 12-year-old kids where their parents have decided to host, it changes their life, and you're setting an example that can't be found in many places.
Yeah, I agree with you, and thank you. And we'll put up on the screen how you can make contact with these good folks and maybe be able to help out some financially. And God bless you for watching our program, and God bless you folks.
Thank you.
Thanks.